em si mesmo. Isso aqui é apenas uma passagem.
Tudo sobre o milagre do deputado.
Mas seu tumor não está mais aí. E esse povo todo aí fora? Quero que você mande eles embora.
Eu sei que tem muita gente aqui precisando de ajuda.
Todo mundo falando disso, a cidade não fala de outra coisa.
Por que o senhor curou meu irmão e não me cura?
Não sou eu que curo, filho. É o careca.
Pede pra ele me curar, pai.
O senhor já sente a presença do Dr. Fritz?
Se você não pode dar ouvido a essas vozes, só vai piorar.
Não quero deixar a Lete e os meninos.
Por que a gente não pode ter uma vida normal? Zezé é um homem bom. O coração dele é bom.
Eu já disse, eu não sou médico, não. O médico é o Dr. Fritz. Longe de mim querer ganhar dinheiro em cima de quem tá doente.
Nem lembro a última vez que eu vi televisão assim com o senhor.
Não vi meus filhos crescerem porque eu tava trabalhando pra você.
Aceita. Essa é sua missão.
Foi você. Mas não parecia você, entende?
Eu não aceitei missão nenhuma!
Você tem que confiar em Deus.
Você casou com um homem e acabou com o outro. Mais da metade do tempo não sou eu que tô aqui, é o careca.
Tá cheio hoje, viu?
Vamos começar o nosso trabalho.
Good morning. It's awesome for us to be here on our Saturday here in the US. It's a bit cool weather for most part of the country. And today we're going to have a very interesting talk with NAHUR FONSECA. Hi, NAHUR. How are you, sir?
Hello, how are you? Bless
Doing
you.
good. I'm excited that you're going to be talking about Abigail, the Christian. You know, it's amazing. And Abigail's story, and I'm pretty sure you're going to focus a lot on her story, how, you know, she got involved in Christianity, but I'm not going to do any spoilers. I'm going to spoil the story because you know you're going to do a much better job than I would ever try. But this is a very exciting topic. I'm pretty sure you're going to focus a lot on the book Paul and Stephen. That's what I believe we're going to do. Yeah. So, and Naahur, so you've been very busy. You've been a collaborator with the youth Spiritist movement since 2002, both in Brazil and the US. You coordinate the study group at the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And you are the coordinator of the Spiritist Family Retreat since 2003. That's an amazing event. And you have a PhD. So you have a PhD in computer science.
That's right.
And you work in high technology. So you're a little, NAHUR FONSECA, you're a little bit busy. And so we appreciate you taking time off your very busy schedule to be with us. Very excited to have you here. Let's start.
Pleasure.
Oh yeah, let's start with our initial prayer.
Okay.
Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity for us to be here, continuing our series of talks on our Saturday mornings or Saturdays, depending on where you are located in the world. But the important thing is we're here to absorb new knowledge and knowledge that can be applied to our lives. Let's take inspiration from all those great spirits, just like Abigail and so many others who reincarnated on earth and showed us the way. They not just talk about how to get it done, but they provided us their example, the true example of what being a Christian is. Bless us in our homes, doing our lecture and during, for the whole weekend, and also bless our lecturer. May he be inspired, and may he transmit to us the teachings, the lessons that we need in our lives and our challenges. So be it.
So be it.
NAHUR, the floor is yours. Let's talk about the Christian.
The floor. this new paradigm shift of meetings being in person versus being online, I think we haven't adapted yet all of our vocabulary. So let me start by really saying thank you. She's not here right now. I've heard she's busy in another event, for the invitation that Tanya Swartz extended to me. When I think of Tanya, I always remember like she's the incarnation of work, positivity, optimism, order, right? And she does all of it with lipstick on her purse, just in case. And I also like to thank Glaucio and the other workers on the backstage, João Corngold, I saw him there, Daniel Santos also, for the work you do for supporting the dissemination of Spiritism in the English language, not only here in the United States, but through the social media anywhere in the world. So my name is NAHUR Fonseca, as Glaucio has already introduced me. I work here in Boston. I'm one of the workers of the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Massachusetts. I have been in many different groups in the center, the children's education, youth education, and now I coordinate the English group education, like we have a public meeting, a study group. And what we have observed, and we'll be curious to hear from others maybe in the end, is since we moved to online meetings, that opened up the opportunity for people who used to go to the center and couldn't come anymore because of distance or some other reason. And the group actually grew online. So we're very happy with that experience. And we would love to hear from, whoever is watching this live, what is the experience that you are having in your center, in your location. As I said before, when Tanya made this invitation, my wife and I are reading Paul and Stephen again. And it was around the time that I was reading the chapter, Abigail the Christian. And we were just so moved by her story, right? And every time you talk about the book, Paul and Stephen, you focus on Paul and Stephen. And we wanted to read the book, right, through the lens of Abigail, maybe focusing on her story, and see what are the lessons there for us. As I was reflecting on this, I thought, well, Abigail, wasn't the natural born orator like her brother, Jeziel. But she also, in her intimate conversations, she displayed a great understanding and rational mind of the Christian teachings. She didn't heal anybody like, Peter and others in the book. You have stories you can see, right? But she would be the balsam, that Paul of Tarsus, at the time Saul of Tarsus, would seek to his fervent and hot mind. So she was the heart of his brain. And she didn't found any churches, but she was, let's say, the pivot that made Saul of Tarsus be that missionary of the Christian movement that was just beginning at that time. So in many ways, Abigail was a great, character in the book. I was counting how many times her name shows up. It's like 200 and something, right? So throughout the book, you see Abigail's influence on the events of the story. So I wanted to follow some structure, so I just decided, okay, let's go chronologically and see the story of Abigail. And you need to begin in her childhood, infancy, right? She lived in Corinth, and with her, mother, father, and brother, and she was raised in the tradition of the time, and she was educated reading the Moses, right, which was the religion, the law of the Jewish people at the time. Yes, and her mother passed away, disincarnated, around the time that there was some complications for her family in terms of political, economical. They lost a lot of land, and she died after that from, they don't say the disease, but she was very sad and disappointed, and died right after that. So she grew up with his brother Jeziel influence, and he was her protector. He was her guide. He would interpret the teachings from the Old Testament to her as she was growing up, and she preserved her. And she always dreamed of fulfilling her womanhood mission, having a home, educating children, being a support for her husband, and raising children to God, or aware. So she understood the life of the family as the mission that God entrusted the women. And she was disappointed, or she was somehow not aligned with what other women would do at the time, and not honoring the role in the family, right? So when the story starts, there's this event where Abigail's father is crossing the market in Corinth, and he just receives, there's no way that he can make it right. So, and he ended up in a court of law in the local Roman, jurisdiction or forum, and because of the events that happened, and now the father is being castigated. He's being whipped, right? And the brother is also being punished for the events that happened. And Abigail is watching all of this. She's only 18 at this time, right? And it's a very moving part of the book. And I have here a part of the book that I want to read for us. So, as the father is, going to die, it's very clear they know. And then the brother Jeziel asked her to pray one of the poems of Isaiah, right? And then she goes, showing an unshakable faith under such embittering circumstances, the young girl on her knees gazed on her father, whose lungs no longer breathed. Then, lifting her eyes on high, she began to chant in a trembling but harmonious, clear voice, Lord God, Father of those who weep, of the sad and oppressed, fortress of the defeated, comfort of all pain. Despite the bitter misery of the weeping over our errors from this world of exile, we call for your love in the afflictions of the way. In the night most tormenting, your generous fount is the good that will never go dry. You are in everything the light eternal of joy and peace, our doorway of hope which will never close. Now, this moment, she was so kind of devoted to it. She was so being faithful. She was the demonstration of a faithful child. Her words could have no effect on what was going on with her father and her brother, but it was so moving. The guards were, awestruck. Even the precinct, the mayor, the governor of the time that was giving the punishment, right, ordering the punishment, he was also stopped, and he couldn't understand what was going on, right? So at that moment, she involved everyone in that prayer, and that what gave her freedom back, right? And then we'll continue her story on. But I just wanted to kind of to notice this aspect of this moment in our lives. What are the moments in our lives that we turn to prayer and that we're so involved in it that it changes something? The power of the prayer, the power of words. And it's just sometimes there's not even words. And I wanted to give like an example, right? Sometimes you make something, you prepare a meal, right? And everybody in the family is enrolled. Oh my goodness, this is so good, right? Because it's visual, the smell, everything involves everybody, and you have that involvement. Sometimes you are making a prayer in the center, and you are so inspired, so moved. All the people, cry, they get touched and moved as well. Or maybe you're giving passes in the cabin in the center, and you're so, you give yourself to it. You empty your worries or concerns, and you're concentrating on your prayer, and the people get moved, and you sense a shift in the room. So you all have that ability, even when you're young. I remember once I was in vacation in Brazil. My daughter was 6. Her cousins were there from 9 to maybe 15, 16. And she came to me and said, "Dad, there was something going on TV, and she wanted to watch a popular children's show in Brazil, but little children's show, and everybody was grown, more teenager." And she asked me, "Dad, can we put that show on?" And then I said, "Well, if you can enroll everybody in their living room to watch it, yes." She didn't, skip a bit. She went to the living room, started jumping. "Yeah, let's watch the show." The whole room was happy and doing it, and the show was on. The adults left the room because they didn't want to watch it. So it's just, I'm trying to give this idea of, we have this ability of involving people in us, enrolling people in what we are up to, using words the way we're being, right? That's one trait I want to pick from Abigail in that part of the story. Well, she is freed from that captivity. Her father died at that moment, and her brother is enslaved. He's sent to the ships, and he would be working as a rower in the ship business, right? And she flees Corinth with Ruth and Zachariah, and they will adopt her, as they themselves have lost a son to another kind of persecution at the time. So they go live in, I think it's called Joppa, right? In English, the name of the town or the road where they lived. And then that's where this story will continue for Abigail, and she will meet this young, promising doctor of the law, Saul of Tarsus. And the conversations, they're dating, but the conversations they have it's really as a young person, as a teenager, when I was reading the book for the first time, it's not from this world, right? Who dates like this, right? And who talks like this when they're dating? But it's really a demonstration of caring and love and respect, and what a union of souls that are attuned to each other that looks like, right? Maybe in another world, maybe in another more elevated earth, that is going to be more normal. And I think I highlighted some portions here that I would like to read. So, when God brought me here to meet you, that's Abigail, your eyes in a flash spoke to me of sublime revelations. You are the heart of my mind, the essence of my reasoning, and you will be the guiding hand of my edification throughout life. So I'm sorry, this is Saul talking to Abigail. He would call her the heart of his mind, right? And then she responds, yes, my darling, what wouldn't I do for you? You shall command and I shall obey. You shall be the order of my life, the law, and I shall pray to God to help me be a balm of tenderness for you. When you're tired, I will remember my mother and will put your kind soul to sleep with the most beautiful prayers of David. You shall interpret God's law or word for me. You shall be the law, and I shall be your servant. That's how they dated. So it just shows what kind of soul Abigail was or is. And no woman had ever talked to Saul of Tarsus like that. Saul was also brought up in the same study of the laws of Moses. But while Abigail and Jeziel saw God as this father who is merciful and takes care of their children, and they also spoke of this Messiah that was coming, right? When they were suffering, they would think of the Messiah would come and console, comfort all the people who were desperate or sad or forgotten from the world, right? And Jeziel even told Abigail once, who knows, maybe he is already here among us, because God works in silence. So that's one side, right? But Paul, studying from the same books, his view of God was this energetic conqueror of worlds. And as the chosen people of Israel, they are destined to greatness, to dominance. And the Messiah could only be a match to that. So it has to be some kind of warrior or some kind of ruler. So for him, he couldn't conceive, right, of the idea of a Messiahs that would only come for the poor people and not the noblest families of their time, right? So there is this difference in views, but Abigail and Saul, they are so in tune, right? And it's interesting to note that Abigail humbled herself, saying, you are the law and I'll be your servant. When in reality, right, what happens later in the book is that Abigail is telling him what to do. And I watched a reflection about the book from Haroldo Dutra Dias recently, studying for this. And the reason he says is that, Paul has this violence, this energy, right? And in a war you have violence against violence, force against force, and you can never achieve peace this way, because all you have force will not respect another force. You just try to get stronger so it can fight again or something like this, right? Force only respects love. And that's what we see here. Saul of Tarsus is meeting love in the person of Abigail. And he totally surrenders because he admits that she is the heart of his mind. And you see later in the book, how this is going to play out. So let's see. Right after they meet, the book starts developing. And I'm sorry if you haven't read the book yet, but this is about the book. So spoiler alerts, you're going to find out some stuff that I encourage you to read the book anyway, because it's much more beautiful there. But right after, soon after they meet and start making plans of getting married and present Abigail to Saul's family and sister and everything, there is this trial going on in Jerusalem. And Paul, or Saul of Tarsus, right, is the executioner, right, of this trial. He's the judge, he's the accuser, and also the executioner. And on the other side is Jeziel. Except that his name is not Jeziel anymore. His name now is Stephen. And I'm not going to tell that part of the story. That's Jeziel's story. But the fact is, Jeziel had converted to Christianity and changed his name to Stephen. And Saul of Tarsus, defending the law of Moses, could not, accept that view of Jesus being the Messiah. Who was Jesus? He was a Nazarene, a no one from no one's land. He was a carpenter, and he died on the cross amongst thieves. He cannot be that Messiah in his view. So this clash of opinions ended up in a court, and now Stephen was being stoned to death. And the guest of honor on Saul's side was Abigail. And she reluctantly accepted his fiancé's invitation because it was a gross, violent act. She didn't want to watch it. But Saul saw that as an opportunity to introduce her to his friends, because they were going to get married. So he wanted to, have her accepted in his midst. So towards the end of the execution, right, the stoning of Stephen, the first martyr of Christianity, Abigail gets in the room and recognizes her brother and tells Saul, "Can I have 1 minute to speak to him, please?" And then Saul, manages to bring Jeziel to another room, and they will have a private conversation, only the three of them. And now everything is too familiar for Abigail, because when she last saw her brother, he was on his knees being punished, right, for something. And she recognized the circumstance a little different. So here's how, it's in the book. She remembered the last moments of her father's torment on the unforgettable day of their separation in the dungeons of Corinth. In a glance, she understood that other forces had been at work there, not Licinius Minucius and his cruel minions, but her own betrothed, her fiancé, transformed into an executioner by a terrible mistake. She caressed the bleeding head more tenderly. She drilled the dying man to her heart as if he were a beloved child. Then, although rigid and unwielding in appearance, Saul of Tarsus observed closely this scene that he would never forget. Holding the dying man in her lap, Abigail lifted up her eyes, displaying the tears streaming down her cheeks. She did not sing, but the prayer left her lips like a natural supplication from her soul to a loving, invisible Father. Lord God, Father of those who weep, of the sad, the oppressed, fortress of the defeated, comfort in all pain. Despite the bitter misery of the weeping over our errors, from this world of exile we clamor for your love. In the afflictions of the way, in the night most tormenting, your generous fount is the good that shall never dry up. You are in everything the light eternal of joy and peace, our door of hope which shall never close. When everything despises us in this world of iniquity, when the tempest comes upon the flowers of illusion, O Father, you are the light divine, the hymn of certainty, overcoming all harshness, overcoming all affliction. On the day of our death, in abandonment or in torment, help us to forget the shadow, the pain, the evil, that in our final moments we may feel the light of life, renewed and forgiven in happy and immortal peace. So again, that memory is going to be etched in Saul's mind, right? And I think what I wanted to point it out with this is just observe how Abigail life is marked by this extreme moments of suffering and trials, right? And nowadays, many of us may have experienced similar losses. People that are close to their families, and it is a lesson for us to trust God. It is common for many people that are not Christians or not believers to use the fact of losing a loved one as proof enough that God doesn't exist, or he's merciless and he can't be God. While Abigail and Jezeel are giving a demonstration of the contrary. It is impossible for us to understand all the plans of God, but we trust that he is just and good. And Jezeel in the book has such a nice understanding of this, right? He says, Abigail is asking, why the children of our people suffer so much? And then Jezeel says, well, I think God as a father who has the oldest children and the youngest children, and the father uses the older ones to teach a lesson to the younger ones by being more demanding or asking them more so they can be an example, a role model for the younger children. So let's see. Oh, yes. And then we come finally to the chapter where Abigail converts to Christianity. And it's funny because if you have followed so far, right, she has been a Christian all her life. But now she will finally read and study Christ's gospel, right? His message. So right after that moment, Saul sees that Abigail and Jezeel are brothers, right? And Stephen is actually Jezeel. Saul ends their engagement right there and abandons Abigail. And now again, Abigail will give a profound demonstration of humility. He doesn't condemn Saul. He doesn't hate him. And in part is because Jezeel, her brother, himself looked at Paul at that moment with forgiveness. In fact, when Jezeel was dying, Jesus came to him, caressing his face, his head. And then Jesus looked at Saul with sadness because his missionary was deviating from his mission. He was doing mistakes. And Stephen looks at Jesus and says, please do not account to him or impute him with this sin. He loves Moses, and he will faithfully serve you when he meets you. He doesn't know you yet. And then Jezeel asks his sister to be a good wife to Saul, right? He didn't see him as an enemy, right? But as this missionary that we should love. But Saul is not there yet, so he ends his engagement. And now, after this second disappointment or deception, right, in her life, Abigail gets very sick. And the only comfort she will find now is from the words of the gospel, which that she receives from Ananias, which is, an old man, a Christian that used to travel spreading the message of Christ. So here is, again, Abigail and Saul talking about it. So Abigail is very frail and dying, right? So Saul says, Abigail, he was highly moved. I have abandoned my pride and vanity as a public figure to come here to ask you whether you have forgiven me, whether you have forgotten me. So after, I think, 8 months of this separation, Saul couldn't process it, right? His brain was missing that nourishment from Abigail's heart. So he goes and bends himself to go talk to her again, right? And then she says, how could I forget you, right? No matter how dry and long the season of the burning sun may be, the leaf in the desert will never forget the beneficent rain that gave it life. It's so beautiful, right? And again, you see this profound demonstration from Abigail of humility, of love, of forgiveness. And don't talk to me about forgiveness either. Can one perchance forgive oneself? We belong to each other, so forever. Didn't you say many times that I was the heart of your mind? And then so, why do you say you were the heart? You still are, and will be forever. So now Saul is in denial, right? That he is planning for the future, that for them to get married again. But Abigail knows that she is dying. She has been coughing blood for days. So she knows her life is expiring. And then she says that she couldn't burden her adopted parents with the truth of what happened in that trial where she lost her brother, because that would make them think something bad about Saul, and she didn't want that. So she kept it to herself until Ananias showed up. And he appeared around here and introduced me to the sacred light of the new revelation. I learned the story of Christ, the Son of the living God. I devoured his gospel of redemption and strengthened myself in his examples. Since that time, I have begun to understand you better by understanding my own situation. Now listen, when Giselle was talking to Abigail about his conversion to Christianity, Abigail had some difficulty accepting it too. So how come this Christ has made you suffer so much? What kind of Lord lets a faithful servant like you suffer so much, right? She had that question. But Giselle told, no, Jesus is the promised Messiah, the consoler, right? And he explained it. So that put something in her head, planted a seed in her mind. Who is this Christ? And she was curious. So when Aeneas came, she devoured all she could read about Christ and about his life, his resurrection, and how he came. And then she has this dialogue with Saul, because Saul is asking, he's confronting again that Christ interfering in his plans of dominance, of power, of love, of marriage, right? And always this Christ interrupting him everywhere, trying to cover him from all sides, right? Jesus is trying to send him all options to come to his field to work, and he's resisting it. And then Paul will listen from Abigail's mouth, his mission, right? So last night, after you left, I felt someone approach me. So this is the next day, and Abigail is almost expiring. And someone approached me, filling the room with light. Giselle had come to me. When I saw him, I remembered Jesus in the ineffable mystery of his resurrection. Giselle told me that God had indeed sanctified our dreams of blessedness, but that I would be taken this very day to the spirit world. He taught me to break the selfishness of my soul. He filled me with courage and brought me to the good news that Jesus loves you very much and has great hopes for you. And then I realized that it would be useful to give myself joyfully into death's hand, because who knows, if I were to stay in the world, I might harm the mission for which the Savior has destined you. So now again, Jesus is inviting Saul and telling him he loves him, despite all his actions so far. Again, that same story, that loves is the only force that violence can respect, right? For me, I will stop here to reflect a little bit. There's other things I would like to read. I'm a little worried about time, but as I was saying in the beginning, right? Abigail didn't go exteriorly and had these great actions and found churches and made speeches, but she was in everything that she did a demonstration of being a Christian. Her faith, her forgiveness, her humility. And I wanted to use our time together here to reflect on all the ways that or small ways, that we demonstrate being Christians in our lives. It is, and it's like, once Abigail passes away, right? And then she comes to to the spiritual world. She is now with Stephen, helping Saul in his mission, right? And then there's a moment where Saul is very sad, and the difficulties are so enormous. The Christians, right, still don't trust him so much, and they are going back to the applying the laws of Moses instead of freeing people with the teachings of Jesus, right? And his old friends at the synagogues are, disputing him, fighting him back. So he is in front of this unsurmountable mountain, right? And he has this vision of Stephen and Abigail. They come to him. And, they console him. They help him understand his mission that is just beginning, to give him that courage, that motivation to continue. And then as they are leaving, Paul asks some questions from Abigail. And her answers are so short, but so profound. So, it's here. It's kind of long, but it's so beautiful that I want to read it with you. So, the former rabbi, they're leaving, right, wanted to prolong the beautiful vision for the rest of his life, to be with Abigail forever. But the cherished spirit displayed a gesture of affectionate farewell, and Saul then made an effort to hurriedly list all his spiritual needs, desirous to hear her on the problems facing him. Anxious to make the most of the smallest fragment of the glorious fleeting minute, Saul mentally arrayed a large number of questions. What could he do to acquire a perfect understanding of Christ's designs? Love, answered Abigail spontaneously. But how could he proceed in order to grow richer in the divine virtues? Jesus ordered us to love even our enemies. He realized, however, how difficult it would be to do that. It was difficult to practice devotion without others' real comprehension. What could he do for his soul to reach such an elevated expression of effort in Jesus Christ? So how do you reform yourself, right? And she says, work, exclaimed his beloved, smiling kindly. And Abigail was right. It was necessary to work for inner progress. He ardently desired to do so. For this reason, he had isolated himself in the desert for more than 1,000 days. However, upon returning to the environment of the collective effort, at the side of former friends, he had nourished blossoming hopes that soon turned into heartbreaking bewilderment. What measures could he adopt against such destructive discouragement? Hope, she said further in a gesture of tender solicitude, like someone who wished to clarify that the soul must be ready to attend to the divine plan in any circumstance, regardless of any personal whims. As he listened to her, Saul remembered that hope had always been with him in his most difficult days. He would know how to hope in the future with the blessings of the Most High. He would trust in his mercy. He would not disdain the opportunity for redemptive service. But what about other people? Everywhere confusion flourished in the spirits. he in fact realized that overall agreement regarding the teachings of the Divine Master represented one of the most difficult tasks besetting the unfolding of the gospel. But more than that, people also seemed uninterested in the truth of enlightenment. The Jews were clinging to the law of Moses, intensifying the system of Pharisaic hypocrisy. The followers of the way were getting closer to the synagogues, avoiding the Gentiles, and submitting strictly to the practice of circumcision. Where was the freedom in Christ? Where was the endless hope that his love had brought to all humankind without excluding the children of other peoples? He agreed that loving, working, and hoping were indispensable, but how was he to behave among such diverse forces? How was he to reconcile the grand lessons of the gospel with the human indifference? Abigail squeezed his hands even more tenderly to show that she was saying goodbye and emphasized gently, "Forgive." And then she disappeared. And those 4 words, love, work, hope, and forgiveness, became Saul's, or Paul, right, motivation throughout his life. He will always remember that moment. So notice how Abigail, right, back there when she was telling him that Jesus loves you, throughout her life, right, how she kind of created that future for Paul, right, and then sustained him throughout his campaign from the spiritual side. And I believe we have a lot of power in what we can create with our words. When we are, educating a child, depending on what we say, if we're correcting someone, right, a child, depending on what we say, maybe creating a future for that child that will stay with her or with him for many, many years. So I love the influence of Abigail throughout the book, right? Like, she's kind of a passive figure if you look at it, but she has a great influence into Saul's life. And in the end, when Saul goes back to the spiritual realm after a long life, a missionary life, Abigail is by the left side of Jesus, the side of the heart, to welcome Saul. And I'm not going to tell all the details, but you need to read. But I just wanted to really acknowledge everyone, right, who is here listening today, and look at yourself, look at your life, all the things, the small things you do in your life, all these decisions that you take, putting the lessons of the Christ in your life, all the moments of forgiveness, of humility, of reconciliation, all these recommendations that she gives of work, love, and hope, and forgiveness. And I want you to acknowledge yourself for the Abigail that you have inside of you. And Glaucio, I don't know if you have any other questions. If you want to come back, I'm happy, that we had this moment together. So I see a few questions here on the prompt. Would you like to read them, or?
Yeah, I mean, sure. So NAHUR, there is that saying that behind every great man there is a great woman. I don't agree. Actually, I don't agree. I think that's as besides every great man there is a great woman, right?
Yeah.
And vice versa. So Abigail was beside Paul all the time.
Yeah.
Right? It's amazing. It's an amazing story. It's so inspiring. Yeah, we have some comments.
I see a question here. I'm not sure I can answer, but let's see.
Yeah, it's coming up right now. Yeah, now we're okay. Yeah,
go ahead,
I mean,
please. No, it's better for you to
thanks
read.
thanks for bring to us Abigail's sweet character, the heart of Paul's mind. You see, look at that. What is the role of Abigail together with Stephen in Paul of Tarsus' endurance during his true transformation? Although coming from similar Mosaic belief, each seems to have so different mindsets. What do you think about this?
Well, what I kind of understand, right, is that both, especially Stephen, but Abigail probably was there as well. In the moments that Paul was writing his letters, right, those letters were kind of mediumistically written. He was inspired. He would never write the letters by himself, right? He would have other people in case he couldn't get the inspiration from the spirits from Christ, from Stephen, from Abigail, maybe others in the room would, right? So I think all these conversations, the first thought that Saul had or Paul had after he passed away, when Ananias asked him, "Who would you like to see?" His first thought was to see Abigail and just right? But then he understood, well, my personal whims, right, should not win over my Christian ideals or Christ's ideals. And then he changed his mind and he goes visits all the churches he founded or helped found and all the Christians that are being persecuted at that moment, right? So it's a great influence. I don't have any details. I just know that her presence, her love, sustained him. Like he was the heart of his mind.
That's awesome. I mean, we should not provide too many spoiler alerts. The book is in English. The book's in Portuguese. The book is in English. We invite everybody to read. I mean, it's a very rich book. I mean, you would agree with me. It's a very rich book. I mean, highly recommend it. Highly recommend. We have more questions.
Yes, please.
Thank you, NAHUR. That's from Daniel. Thank you, NAHUR. Could you share with us what in the book touched you the most and why? That would be tough for me, but yeah, I'm pretty sure you can answer that.
Yeah. Well, every time you read the book, you grow a little bit and you change something, right? I remember the first time I read as a teenager, I was very moved by Paul's transformation and his struggles. It was the first book that I remember I cried when I was reading the book, right? It was the first memory that I have. And I became a fan of Paul ever since, right? And this time, I really admired Abigail's example, right? Of there's a part in this chapter of Abigail the Christian that we think of Abigail as being already a Christian when she was born. She was a high elevated spirit, right? But Paul or Saul makes a comment about Abigail's transformation after she got in touch with Christ's teachings. Not only her sadness got transformed and she was more resigned and understanding, so she had a better understanding. But Paul noticed that Abigail used to have women normal whims. Like if he was late in a date, right, she would kind of complain or make a fuss or something, right? So she had her feminine costumes or habits. And at that moment he was talking to her, he realized that was gone, right? So there was a transformation in Abigail, right? And I don't know, this time around, this example of Abigail really stuck with me. And the way that he created Paul by the way she spoke to him, like Jesus loves you and you're going to be his missionary or something, right? She was saying something for the future. She had no way of predicting what was going to happen, but by saying that, she planted that seed in Paul, and that caused that confusion in his mind when he was going to Damascus, right? She was always in his thoughts. So I really paid attention to her this time, I think, and all the ways that she submitted herself, right, to God's designs. This is so hard because this is a victory over our ego, right? And what we want and what we think is right and what we think we should do, right? And she just gives herself completely to God and say, maybe I should die so that I don't interfere with your mission, right? So that's a very spiritual height, very high.
That is, yeah, that is very very selfishless. That's truly, definitely beyond me.
Yeah.
Amazing, just amazing how the example Abigail is one of those characters. But again, people should know more if they read the book.
Yeah.
Read the book.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I saw a comment here. Like, I wonder
Yeah.
what is she doing nowadays, right? If she's still,
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, that's a very interesting comment. Yeah.
if she's still, yeah, I haven't heard of anything like yet. But what type of work she's doing, I don't know, right? She's still attached to Earth somehow. Have you heard of anything, Glosser, yourself?
No, I have not.
No, right?
But I would not be surprised of the kind of work that spirits like Abigail and Stephen they are up to. It's kind of like when we think about our missions, right? When we think about our missions with our family members, with the people around us, and then you think about those spirits, I mean, it's truly inspiring. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, what you mentioned about her recognizing Saul's potential, right? That's something remarkable.
Yes.
It's just remarkable. More questions. We have more questions here.
Well, I hope she is still involved in spreading the work of Christ, disseminating it. And in that sense, it's aligned with our mission here as well in the United States Spirits Federation, right? We're trying to spread that same message of Christianity. And I didn't say this, but this is my hope to all of us, that we may live our lives without ever having to say that we are Spiritists or Christians, because our actions speak louder, right, than anything we could say with our mouths. And that's
right.
That's Abigail to me in this book, right?
Yeah, walk the talk, don't talk the walk, walk the talk, be a spiritist in our actions, in our examples. I have another question here. What can Abigail teach us about dealing with our loved ones who think differently from us?
Oh. I'm trying to think, because yes, so she did have not an argument with her father, right? Jeziel and Abigail did not agree with her father that he should go seek justice for his, he was treated unfairly, right? That he should resign and accept the situation, right? But she respected him, right? They didn't stop him, well, maybe because he was an authority in their lives at that time, right? But she didn't condemn him either after the fact, right? She just took responsibility and say, well, I wish mother was still alive, because she would be able to convince him, to kind of show him, right? So she took responsibility instead of blaming him. It's like, it's we that failed in convincing or showing him another experience, right? So, and regarding Paul, right, they had this disagreements also, how harsh to be, and she always offered a kind, loving perspective, but would not try to force an outcome, would not try to, it was just inviting, right? So I think in that sense, it's the same way the good spirits treat us. They will make invitations, but they will not force or overrule our free will. And so I think, Abigail is the invitation of love in our lives, and take responsibility, not blaming others.
Pretty much doing our part, right? I mean, doing our part and treating those with respect and giving time. That's truly amazing. It's her example is truly remarkable. There's another interesting question here: love, work, hope, forgive. Those three keywords, right? Please talk a little bit more about it in our daily lives. I think that would be another lecture, right?
That's right. But I'm taking it to myself, and I was reflecting last evening. And what can I do to put this in practice in my own life? Right. This is the question, right? And every day, right, we have moments of choice. It could be anything. It could be someone in the street asking you for a favor, right? So, and what I was thinking was, if I can align myself with those 4 directives: love, work, hope, and forgiveness, and any requests that come my way, right, any circles that come my way, right, if I can ask, is this aligned with love or work or hope or forgiveness? Then I'm a yes, an automatic yes for that, right? So I think if you can set up some kind of a system, or I don't know, reminders, right, and just in any situation, just work. Is this aligned with those things? Because that's what I want to be all about, right? I want people to, as I said, recognize me, not because I say I'm a spiritist, but they have those 4 words that can describe me. Oh, loving, always offered to work and working himself, and hope the best of people. Right? So in any situation, if you find an alternative that aligns with one of those 4, go for it, right? I think that's the practical advice. It really is a choice, right? If you and it's a choice done from a free will, it takes it doesn't take much, really, when you think about it. If you go to the Spirit's book and say, I forget the name of the question, but the Spirits Kardec asked the Spirits, what can we do, right, to do more good than evil? I forget the exact words, but then the Spirit's simple answer is, you just need to make an effort. But so many little of you make any effort, right? So I think the question was, right, the follow-up question to what do you do to overcome our bad tendencies? Or you know yourself, right? Like an old sage told you. Yeah, we know we need to know ourselves, but how do we put this in practice? And so with effort, just put effort to it, and small amounts of effort, right? And you cannot give jumps, so it will build up, right?
It's interesting that she did not mention preach, right? She did not mention, convert others, change others' minds, just say love, work, hope, and forgive. And forgive, to your point, that's, forgive myself as well, right? I love, work, hope, and forgive others, and forgive myself, because, to your point, I mean, we're never going to make jumps. We are perfect, not perfect. We're not perfect. We're not perfect. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is awesome. No, this has been a very interesting, brought back memories. I gotta confess, just between you and me, there are other people listening, but actually when I was a teenager, that was the first book that made me cry as well. But that's just between you and me. And everybody else was listening.
It's all a little secret.
This is awesome. Now, thank you. I do not see any additional comments. So you've been a little bit busy, right?
Yes.
So a little bit busy, and you have work. So like now is for you to provide us with any additional comments that you have to close. this very interesting, very rich lesson about a very rich spirit, very spirit that exemplifies Christianity to a point. So if you could do any additional closing remarks, also if you want to talk about any kind of upcoming events or any work that you'd like to make known, that'll be awesome. That'll be very that'll be a nice way for us to finish. And of course, better yet, after you say the final prayer as well.
Yeah, well, I really need to thank you all for inviting me. It was really a pleasure. It's every time you are invited to give a talk like this, it's an opportunity for us to study more. And I was very happy to be reading the book with my wife. So it has been a highlight of our evenings when we read the book together. And yes, you asked what I'm up to these days. So here in during the pandemic, right? So we have been running an event that we call the Family Spirits Retreat for 18 years. And last year, because of the pandemic, we made a little kind of joke, right? A little play. We said, well, when God sends you lemons, you make lemonade. And when God sends everybody home, what we do is we make a Family Spirit Retreat for the whole world. So we open it up to participants all over the world. And it was very enriching experience.
You have the link down there, right? FamilySpiritistRetreat.org. That's the link, right?
That's right. But this year, we decided to do two things differently. We're going to open it and focus to all centers, spiritual centers of the United States. So the idea is to bring all the centers of the United States together to the Family Spirit Retreat. And we're going to have two instead of one event. So it's going to be 2 days. On a Saturday, we're going to have a in-person event that is going to be spread out according to the social distance regulations in each state, how many people can gather. We'll have volunteers in different places, and we're going to send them a kit with the Family Spirit Retreat logo and everything inside, with instructions on what to do. And that's going to be the in-person event. And then on Sunday, we're going to have this virtual online event with people from all over the country here for families, young children, teens, and even something new we're adding this year, people who have never heard of Spiritism. So the idea is to really promote the unification of the spiritual centers of the United States by just the fact of getting to know each other. That's like the first step. Include all the centers, include all the different states, and expand also Spiritism to other people who have never heard of it. And so we are counting on educators from all over the country to join us. And we even received a very special message from 2031. I hope you can play it. It's a some spiritual mentors gave this message, and in a meeting. I want you to see it.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Oh, hello. Welcome back. What good tidings do you bring from Earth?
Hello, my dear friend. Good tidings indeed. I was visiting the Spiritist centers of the United States. Can you believe they're still reaping the benefits of the Family Spiritist Retreat of 2021? It has been 10 years.
Of course I believe it. The works of the good are eternal. Now tell me, what did you see?
The most remarkable thing are the friendships that the children and teens carried over to their early adult lives, weaving the country in threads of love and care.
It reminds me of our spiritual family ties and how we connect to our loved ones even across the galaxy. What else did you see?
Inspired by the ideals of unification, inclusion, and expansion, many Spiritist centers were opened. Many extended their activities in English, and reached out to their communities, finding creative ways to be of service. Each center has a particular identity, a characteristic charm or style, and each and every one of them, in their own way, took to heart the Spirit of Truth recommendation.
Oh, Spiritists, love one another. This is the first teaching. Educate yourselves. This is the second.
Precisely.
Yes, I knew what you were thinking. I love this phrase too.
And you know what moves me even more?
I can't imagine, but tell me.
The large number of spirits from our community that are being reborn in the United States and who are going to hear in one of these centers the teachings of our Lord Jesus for the first time in their new lives.
I myself am currently visiting triplets who chose to be born in a Spiritist family near a center in Arizona in order to better fulfill their mission in this incarnation.
God be praised.
Blessings to all spiritual workers of the United States, including Spiritists, and blessings to all the peoples of the world.